As a director, could you sense times during this long multi-year process when people just needed to laugh, your workers, your animators and everybody else, things were just too tense and people were just too snippy with each other? And what did you do? How do you step in and change that vibe when things start going south a little bit?
Well, that's where you kind of got to go, we're all in this together and let's celebrate milestones, right? Because making an animated film is a very long process, particularly at Disney in those days. It was a 4-year journey. Now, not everybody was on it for that whole 4 year. They would kind of come and go as depending on their department. But when we're talking about animation, which is kind of the core and the longest department that's working on the film, that's a year and a half. So for a year and a half, it's ramping up and getting more and more stressful for the animators. So we celebrate certain milestones. So when we got to 50% done in animation, we threw a party. And Barry, my co-director, and I used to love, I still do, I love donuts. And we were talking one day in a meeting and just joking around about, I wonder how many donuts is $1,000 worth of donuts. And, like what kind of a pile would that look like? And so that became our treat for the animators. We had $1,000 of donuts party. And so we had invited everybody to kind of guess, like how much donuts can you buy for $1,000? And what would that look like? And it was a ton, particularly at that time in Florida, donuts were fairly cheap. So we had cartons and cartons of donuts that right as they came out of, all the animators came out of dailies one day, and we had this whole party set up, $1,000 of donuts in a party. And everybody had donuts, and we had plenty left over after that for like a week or something. But that was like one of those icebreakers. That's like one of those moments where we just like, let's do something silly and let's celebrate the fact that you guys are doing a great job, and let's do something together that's kind of silly and fun.
That's really great. And it seems to me that's really where that trait of empathy can come into play, where you're just more in tune with the vibe than someone who, like me, scores a little lower on the emotional intelligence scale. I've taken the test and I'm a little lower, and they show you pictures of people's expression and say, what are they feeling? And I get it wrong. So there's a real strength in that, because you can keep people, you can build some longevity and perseverance with your crew by really loving on them that way, can't you?
Yeah. Oh, it's huge. It's huge. And thankfully the production people at Disney know that there's certain points that we need to kind of stop and celebrate. And like screenings, we have screenings multiple times. And it's a way of not only communicating so that everybody kind of knows what's going on, but it's also a time of celebration. Like, look how far we've come. Yeah, we still have far to go, but look how far we've come, and let's celebrate that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such great advice. Let me ask you about the time that we find ourselves in now, this COVID quarantine.
Yeah.
I tell you what, we've got more streaming subscriptions than we've ever had right now, because all 5 of us are at home, right? A couple college kids and a high schooler, and we're all at home, and we want lots of options. And we've got the Disney Plus, so we can watch every one of them as often as we want to. In your opinion, as an animator, as an artist, as a director, as an entertainer, what does animation have to offer us as a culture right now, in a time where there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear and uncertainty of what's coming? How can we tap into this part of our culture and really find maybe some peace and some contentment there?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's something that movies does really well in general, because, let's face it, movies are about escapism, just like reading a book or something like that. But you're really going into a world. When you sit down, you're kind of investing yourself and saying, I want to go somewhere else, not where I am now in my own mind, not with where I am in the world and what's going on with COVID. I just want to sit down and follow somebody else's story and follow a hero and on their journey and go into a new world and see them solve something and have a happy ending. I mean, let's face it, happy endings are popular for a reason, because we want to go on that journey, escape with the character, and then also see that it worked out well. Because that soothes us. That makes us feel good when we go home or when we go to bed that night. And So I've always been one that likes the commercial movie, and animation tends to go that way. It tends to be even more so a commercial film, in that it's made for a universal market that likes that happy ending. So all my movies that I've ever worked on always had that 3-act structure, but always ended with that happy ending and the lesson learned that the character gets from it. So in that way, it feels edifying for the viewer. Not only did they go on this journey, but they also kind of learned something with the character. That's the best kind of movies. They learned something with the character, feel like they grew a little bit because of the story that they just enjoyed, and they felt good about it on the other side of it. And therefore it makes them feel good too. And I love that. I love that about what we do in movies in general, but then animation, I feel like we can do that in an even deeper way, because we can create any kind of world. I mean, we could have animals that talk, things that we could only fantasize about in our mind when we're kids, being able to talk to your dog or your pet or something like that. In animation, that's not a barrier. We can go to alien worlds. We can go to fantasy worlds of Lord of the Rings and things like that. And now that's, of course, the lines are being blurred between animation and live action many times because of computer animation. But the idea is still there, that animation gives us the ability to really go anywhere and do anything.
For me, as someone who loves to watch movies, and I really love animated films, what makes or break it, yes, it's story. We all know that. But a great story with characters that I can't relate to, where there's no connection for me, I forget about them in 24 hours. But the stories where I'm sad that the movie's over because I feel like my friendship is ending and I'm losing that character, whether it's an animated character or somebody's acting that character out, that's when I get hooked, and that's when I feel passionate. What is it about that? How do you make a film where your actors are drawn, they're animated, and yet I can feel like I know them and I'm friends with them, and I don't want our little short relationship to end?
Well, there's a lot of complex elements to it, but the basics is really comes from starting with a story and a script that people can connect to, people can relate with. It has to be unique enough that it's a new story and it's a new journey for the audience member, something that they wouldn't expect or not know where the twists and turns are, certainly, but it also has to revolve around characters that you can be empathetic with and relate to. And often, let's face it, there's certain structures in place that we see in a lot of different versions of stories, right? And there's a lot of themes too that we see in different kinds of movies. But to revolve an animated story around a character that you like and that you have empathy for means that you'll want to go on that journey with them. And then if you can connect that story to a theme, which is kind of the lesson learned that we all kind of need and feel like we feel growth from, then it gives us more of a feeling of we saw that character change, and that means that change is possible in my life too, and that it's not always going to be bad for me, just like it wasn't always bad for that character. And animation does that really well in a capsulated way. We spend a lot of time playing with devices and elements in the story structure and characters, really digging deep into them so that they do feel real to you, that there is a believability. And we talk about believability, and I've started talking to even just my students about that, how necessary that believability is. You create worlds with rules so that the audience can go into that world. They understand the rules of that world and of that character, even if it's animated, and then they invest a certain believability. Now, if you break those rules, then you lose the believability for the audience, and therefore they can't connect as well with the characters or the world itself. So there are certain rules that we start off with that the audience has to kind of sit down and agree to by just viewing it, and by them sticking with it, they kind of sign off on, I'm okay with this taking place on a foreign planet, or I'm okay with this being about a bunny that's talking. But as long as that bunny doesn't start now, I don't know, acting like a real bunny, unless that's part of the story dynamic. But I accept them for where they are now, and until I get more information, that's where my head is at. So yeah, you have to just always be thinking about not losing your audience too.
You talk about one of the main values of films right now, feature-length films, is the escape. And I think for me, and maybe for others like me, the more I can connect with the characters, the deeper and more complete that escape is. I really can immerse myself, and I feel like I know that person, even if that person is hopping around like a bunny.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and
You,
there's so many great examples of that in Disney history. They've created a canon full of stories that are deep, that are heartfelt, that pull at your heartstrings, that have a believability, that have characters that you can invest in. And it's really it all started with Walt's premise of connecting with people through entertainment.
Yeah. Wow. One last COVID question. We'll start to wrap things up.
Yeah.
Is it possible that the animation industry could actually benefit more than other industries? Not trying to put a positive spin on this horrible thing we're all dealing with, in the sense that I know a lot of films are on hiatus right now. Everybody's excited to see the next Mandalorian series, but everything's paused because he would look silly with a mask on, right? So
Right.
in animation, because you have the possibility of working remotely from one another, is this industry really going to see a boost because of this shift in our culture?
Yeah, I believe so. And certainly I've been reading articles about that in Daily Variety and some of the Hollywood trades. And right now, you're right that because of COVID, live action production is at a stopping point. TV production, anything with live actors on a stage, you just can't do that right now. And people are trying to figure out ways of coming out of that. But animation hasn't stopped. It's almost like we've been preparing for this in this industry forever, because everything had been turning digital over the years anyway, whether it be visual effects or post-production, it's all done on a computer. 2D animation, CG animation, it's all done on computers. So just that element means that we could transfer that work to being at home. And we have, and many times on many films anyway, there's artists that are working half weeks already, working sometimes at home and then going in for meetings and things like that in the office. Well, we've just taken the meeting element out and put it on Zoom calls, and so we can still connect and get expectations and schedules and everything and reviews done. But then the actual craft of what we do creatively is just done on Cintiqs and computers and in Photoshop and in different software programs that we've been using already. So it hasn't stopped. If anything, I think we've gotten busier during this time, because I see some studios that are greenlighting certain animated shows, TV shows or movies, because they can start on them. And they're like, we got to have something that's going to be coming out next year. And if it's not going to be this live action stuff, at least we can have some animation out there and not everything stops, So it has been, I'm busier now than I have been even last year, probably, even through this COVID. I've been really busy just continuing to work.
That's really exciting. Okay, let me ask one last question. I want to end on kind of a fun note. And I didn't prepare you for this. I'm sorry, I probably should have.
All right.
Can you do any of your characters' voices?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a professional voice actor, but you listen to them so many times, you just can't help to imitate them after a while. So there's, Pumbaa always has this low, grovelly voice. Hakuna Matata, ain't no passing craze. So he kind of talks like that. And then
I love
Kronk,
it.
of course, who I just love, Patrick Warburton, who does his voice. But I know a lot of people try and do Patrick Warburton, but he's got kind of a lower kind of a in your chest kind of voice, like whispery. Oh yeah, the poison for Cusco. Poison chose especially to kill Cusco. That poison. So, and then
that's
there's
fantastic.
Stitch, which a lot of people can't do, but I think it's kind of easy. It's just, Um, Ohana means family, and family means no one gets left behind.
Tony Bancroft, on that note, I want to thank you so much. I want to wish you luck on Space Jam 2. And this has been great. I really appreciate your time.
Nice talking to you, David. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.